What happens when a young waitress driven by a desire to protect her dreams stops a billionaire from making a deal that could cost lives and legacies? And what if that same waitress, in offering him a simple piece of advice, changes the course of her own life forever? The rain hadn't let up for hours, turning the streets outside the Corner Spot Cafe into rivers of gray. Clara Reed, 29, moved through the diner with the practiced grace of someone who'd spent years balancing trays and dodging chaos. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Before we continue, tell us where in the world you're watching from. Drop it in the comments below. And if you enjoy this story, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more powerful content like this. Her dark curls were pinned back, her apron stained with coffee and grease. She was used to the late shift, the leering truckers, the stingy tips, the endless grind. But tonight felt heavier. Her mother, Maria, had had a bad day, her fibromyalgia flaring up again. The medical bills were piling up faster than Clara could scrape together cash, and the weight of it all pressed against her chest like a stone. The Corner Spot was a relic, its cracked vinyl booths and flickering fluorescent lights a testament to better days long gone. The jukebox in the corner hadn't worked in years, and the smell of burnt coffee lingered no matter how much Clara scrubbed. She glanced at the clock. 11:47 p.m. Just a few more hours, and she could collapse into bed before starting it all over again. The bell above the door jingled, and Clara looked up expecting another regular. Instead, a man in a soaked wool coat stepped inside, his presence jarring against the diner's worn-down charm. He was tall with sharp cheekbones and dark hair slicked back from the rain. His suit screamed money, but his face, pale and drawn with shadows under his eyes, told a different story. He scanned the empty diner, then slid into a booth by the window, pulling a tablet from his briefcase. Clara grabbed a pot of coffee and approached. "Evening coffee." He barely looked up. "Black, no sugar," she poured, noting the way his hand shook slightly as he tapped at the tablet. Papers were scattered across the table, dense with numbers and legal jargon. Clara's eyes caught a headline on one Sterling Industries poised for hostile takeover of Auratech. She didn't know much about business, but she knew Auratech. Her father, Samuel, had founded it decades ago before his death when she was just a kid. The company had been his dream, a way to use technology to bridge gaps, not widen them. Now, it was just another name in a headline about to be swallowed by someone like this guy. She turned away, but something about him kept her glancing back. He wasn't just stressed. He looked broken, like he was carrying a weight as heavy as her own. Clara wasn't always this tired. Growing up, she'd been a dreamer, sketching designs for apps that could help people like her. Kids from rough neighborhoods with big ideas, but no way to make them real. Her father had encouraged her, telling her stories of how Auratech would change the world. But when Samuel died in a car accident when Clara was 12, everything changed. Maria's illness worsened, and Clara's dreams were shelved. She dropped out of college to work, first at a grocery store, then at the Corner Spot. Every dollar went to bills, medicine, or keeping the lights on. Clara's strength came from her mother. Maria, even on her worst days, had a quiet resilience that Clara clung to. "We don't shatter, baby," Maria would say, her voice raspy but firm. "We endure." Clara lived by those words, even when she felt like she was one bad day from crumbling. But there was another side to Clara, one she kept buried. She was angry. Angry at the world for taking her father, for making her mother suffer, for trapping her in a life where survival was the only goal. That anger simmered beneath her calm exterior, flaring up when customers got too handsy, or when her uncle Leo showed up with his schemes. Leo was Maria's brother, a small-time hustler who always had a sure thing that never panned out. Clara tolerated him for her mother's sake, but she didn't trust him, not after he'd borrowed money from her and never paid it back. Tonight, that anger felt closer to the surface. Maybe it was the rain or the way her feet ached or the sight of that headline about Aura Tech. Whatever it was, it made her pause when she refilled the man's coffee, her eyes lingering on his tablet. Julian Sterling, 38, was a name that carried weight. Chief Executive Officer of Sterling Industries, he'd built an empire from the ground up, taking over his father's modest investment firm and turning it into a juggernaut. He was known for his ruthlessness, his ability to close deals that others couldn't. But tonight, he felt like a fraud. The Auratech takeover was supposed to be his crowning achievement, a move that would cement his legacy. Instead, it was unraveling. Shareholders were wavering, the media was sniffing around, and Julian's own conscience, something he'd long ignored, was gnawing at him. Julian's father, Robert, had been a different kind of man. A small-town investor who valued people over profits, Robert had taught Julian to do right by others. But Robert died when Julian was 25, and the lessons faded as Julian climbed the corporate ladder. Now sitting in this dingy diner, Julian felt further from his father's values than ever. The Auratech deal would destroy a company that had once been a beacon of innovation, but it would make Julian untouchable. He needed this win. His board was circling, waiting for him to falter. His marriage had crumbled years ago. His daughter barely spoke to him, and his life felt like a house of cards ready to collapse. He stared at the tablet, the contract glowing on the screen. One signature and it was done. So why couldn't he do it? Clara was wiping down the counter when she glanced at Julian again. He was muttering to himself, his fingers hovering over the tablet. She didn't know why she cared, but something about him reminded her of her mother on her worst days, trapped, fighting a battle no one else could see. Before she could stop herself, she walked over. "More coffee?" she asked, holding the pot. He shook his head, eyes still on the screen. "No, I'm good." She hesitated, then blurted, "Don't sign this." Julian's head snapped up, his eyes narrowing. "What?" Clara's heart raced. She shouldn't have said anything. This wasn't her place, but the words were out and she couldn't take them back. I saw the headline, Aura Tech. "You're about to ruin something good. Don't do it." Julian stared at her incredulous. "You don't even know me or what this is. I know enough," she said, her voice steady despite the fear clawing at her. "I know what it's like to fight for something and lose it anyway. Whatever's on that screen, it's not worth it if it's tearing you up like this." For a moment, neither spoke. The rain drummed against the windows, the only sound in the diner. Julian's jaw tightened, but he didn't look away. There was something in her eyes, honesty maybe, or pain that hit him harder than he expected. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice quieter now. "Clara," she said simply. "Just Clara." Over the next hour, The diner stayed empty, and Clara found herself talking to Julian. It started small, refilling his coffee, asking if he wanted pie. But soon, she was telling him about her life, about Maria's illness, the bills that kept coming, the dreams she'd buried. She didn't know why she was opening up to a stranger, but something about him made her feel like he was listening, really listening. Julian, in turn, surprised himself by talking back. He told her about the pressure of running a company, the loneliness of a life built on power. He didn't mention his father, but Clara's stories stirred memories of Robert, his laughter, his belief in doing right. For the first time in years, Julian felt like someone saw him, not just his title. "You ever think about walking away?" Clara asked, leaning against the counter. "From all of it?" Julian laughed, a bitter sound. "Every day, but it's not that simple." "Maybe it is," she said. "Maybe you just need a reason." Her words stayed with him, echoing in his mind as he stared at the contract. He didn't sign it that night. Instead, he left a $100 tip and promised to come back. The next night, Julian returned. Clara was surprised, but didn't show it. They talked again, and over the next few days, a fragile bond formed. Julian started to see Clara not just as a waitress, but as someone with a strength he envied. She in turn saw glimpses of a man who wasn't as cold as the world thought. One evening, Julian mentioned Oratech's history, how its founder had been a visionary. Clara froze, her hand tightening around the coffee pot. "You mean Samuel Reed?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Julian nodded. "Yeah, brilliant guy, died too young." Clara's heart pounded. She hadn't told Julian her last name. "He was my father," she said, the words spilling out before she could stop them. Julian stared, stunned. "Your father?" She nodded, her eyes glistening. "He built Oratech to help people, not to make money. After he died, it was sold off to people who didn't care. And now you're finishing what they started." Julian felt like the ground had shifted beneath him. Clara wasn't just a waitress. She was the daughter of the man whose legacy he was about to destroy. And her words, "Don't sign this," weren't just a plea. They were a call to protect something sacred. As Clara and Julian grew closer, a shadow from her past reappeared. Her Uncle Leo showed up at the diner one night, his smile too wide, his eyes too sharp. He'd heard about the rich guy Clara was talking to and saw an opportunity. "Clara, baby," he said, leaning against the counter, "you got a chance to make things right for us. Get close to this sterling guy, find out what he's planning. We could use that information." Clara's stomach churned. "I'm not doing that, Leo. He's not like you think." Leo's smile faded. "You owe me, girl. I've been there for you and your mama. Don't forget that." Clara wanted to scream. Leo had never been there. Not really. He'd taken money, made promises he never kept. But he was family, and that word carried weight. She felt trapped, torn between her loyalty to her mother and her growing trust in Julian. Julian, meanwhile, was wrestling with his own demons. Clara's revelation about her father changed everything. He dug into Oratech's history and found evidence of corruption, how Samuel's partners had pushed him out before his death, how the company had been gutted for profit. The more he learned, the angrier he got, not just at the system, but at himself for being part of it. He made a decision. Instead of signing the deal, he called an emergency board meeting and laid out the truth. He proposed scrapping the takeover and investing in Aurotech to restore its original mission. The board was furious, threatening to oust him. But Julian stood firm, Clara's words echoing in his mind. Maybe you just need a reason. The fallout was swift. Sterling Industries stock tanked and investors pulled out, but the media caught wind of Julian's stand and the public rallied behind him. Hashtags like #Save Aurotech trended, and Julian became an unlikely hero. Back at the diner, Clara faced her own reckoning. Leo pushed harder, threatening to tell Maria about Clara's disloyalty. Clara finally snapped. "You don't get to use me anymore," she said, her voice shaking but strong. "I'm done." She went to the police with evidence of Leo's illegal dealings, documents she'd found in his apartment years ago, but never had the courage to use. Leo was arrested, and Clara felt a weight lift. For the first time, she was free. With the takeover halted, Julian reached out to Clara. He offered her a role at Aurotech, not as a token gesture, but because he believed in her. "Your father's vision needs you," he said, "and I think you're ready." Clara hesitated. She wasn't a businesswoman. She was a waitress. But then she thought of her mother, of her father, of all the people like her who deserved a chance. She accepted, stepping into a world she'd never imagined. Together, Clara and Julian rebuilt Aurotech, focusing on projects that empowered underserved communities. Clara launched a program to teach coding to kids from low-income neighborhoods, giving them the tools her father had dreamed of. Julian, for his part, found purpose in using his wealth for good. He wasn't perfect. None of them were, but he was trying. One day, as Clara stood in her new office, looking out over the city, she found a letter in her father's old files. It was addressed to her, written days before his death. "Clara," it read, "the world will try to shatter you, but you're stronger than you know. Keep fighting for what's right, and you'll light the way for others." Clara cried, clutching the letter. She'd always thought her father's legacy was Aurotech, but now she understood it was her courage, her heart, her refusal to give up. And as she looked out at the city, she knew she was just getting started. Julian, too, found peace. He'd lost much of his fortune, but he'd gained something better, a purpose. And in Clara, he'd found a friend, maybe more, who reminded him who he could be. The rain had stopped, and the corner spot was quieter now. Clara didn't work there anymore, but she visited sometimes, bringing Maria for pie. The diner hadn't changed, but Clara had. She was a leader, a dreamer, a beacon for others. And as she sat with her mother, laughing over old stories, she knew one thing for sure: she had endured, but she hadn't shattered. And neither had the world. Not yet.